Close your eyes for a second. Just try it. You probably won't, because closing your eyes feels like losing something. Sight feels like the sense you couldn't live without. But the real answer is far stranger. The most important sense you have isn't the one you'd guess. It isn't sight. It isn't hearing. It's the one you never think about. The one working right now as you sit there. The one that started before you were even born. It's touch. Sounds too simple, doesn't it? A sense you associate with holding hands or feeling fabric. But touch isn't a minor sense tucked away in your skin. It's the foundation everything else was built on top of. Here's the strange part. In the womb, touch is the first sense that switches on. Weeks before your eyes could open, before your ears could process sound, your skin was already receiving the world. A fetus responds to touch by around 8 weeks. Sight doesn't come online until months later, and even then it's blurry, useless, half-formed. Touch was there first. Touch was doing the job alone. So why does sight get all the credit? Because sight is loud. It dominates your attention, floods your brain with data, and convinces you it's running the show. But underneath that noise, touch has been quietly keeping you alive the entire time. And when scientists finally looked closely at what happens when touch disappears, what they found should unsettle you. In the 1950s, a psychologist named Harlow ran an experiment that still makes people uncomfortable today. He separated infant rhesus monkeys from their mothers and gave them 2 substitute options. One was a bare wire frame that dispensed milk. The other was a soft, cloth-covered frame with no food at all. Logic says the monkeys should have clung to the one that fed them. They didn't. They clung to the cloth mother. They only left it briefly to feed from the wire one, then rushed straight back to the soft surface and held on. Food wasn't the priority. Touch was. The monkeys deprived of that soft contact didn't just grow up a little anxious, they grew up fundamentally altered. Some rocked back and forth obsessively. Some couldn't interact normally with other monkeys for the rest of their lives. A missing sense of touch didn't just leave a gap, it rewired everything downstream of it. You might be thinking, that's monkeys, not people. Fair. But the human version of this story exists too, and it's worse. In Romanian orphanages in the 1980s and 90s, infants were fed, kept warm, and kept clean. What they weren't given was touch. No holding, no skin contact, just physical maintenance without physical connection. Researchers who studied these children years later, including work referenced by neuroscientist Bruce Perry, found developmental damage that mirrored what Harlow saw in his monkeys. Stunted growth, delayed cognitive development, difficulty forming attachments for the rest of their lives. Calories weren't the missing ingredient. Contact was. So here's the reframe. You spent your whole life ranking sight above everything else. But sight can be lost, and people adapt. Entire lives are lived fully and richly without it. Touch loss doesn't work the same way. Touch loss, especially early and prolonged, doesn't just limit you, it can break the architecture your nervous system was trying to build. Why would evolution build it this way? Because for most of human history, touch was the fastest, most reliable signal of survival. Long before language, before facial expressions carried complex meaning, physical contact told an infant one thing instantly. You are not alone, and you are safe. A hand on the back. A body pressed close for warmth. That signal didn't need decoding. It went straight into the nervous system and said, live. Neuroscientist David Linden, who has spent much of his career studying the biology of touch, points out something that sounds almost too simple to be true. Your skin isn't just a container holding your organs in place. It's an active sensory organ, packed with nerve endings that specialize in different jobs. Some detect light brushing. Some detect pressure. Some detect the exact kind of slow, gentle stroking that triggers a flood of oxytocin, the same chemical released during bonding and connection.
Your body built a specific receptor for being cared for. Think about that.
You have a biological pathway whose entire purpose is to recognize gentle human contact and reward you for receiving it. Vision doesn't have that. Hearing doesn't have that. Only touch comes wired with a built-in mechanism for detecting affection. And it doesn't stop mattering once you're grown. Researcher Tiffany Field, who has spent decades studying touch at the Touch Research Institute, has shown that adults who receive regular physical contact, even something as simple as a hand on the shoulder, show measurable drops in stress hormones and measurable boosts in immune function. Hospitals that increase skin-to-skin contact for premature infants saw faster weight gain and shorter hospital stays. Not because of medicine, because of contact. Here's the twist that makes this stranger still. You are, right now, almost certainly touch-starved compared to humans throughout most of history. For nearly all of human existence, people slept in groups. They worked in close physical proximity. They carried infants against their bodies for hours a day instead of in strollers or car seats. Physical closeness wasn't an event, it was the environment. Constant, low-level, background contact was simply what being human felt like. Now think about your average day. You wake up, you scroll a phone, you sit alone in a car or on a train surrounded by strangers you're careful not to touch. You work at a screen. You order things instead of visiting shops. Even affection has become scheduled, deliberate, occasional instead of ambient. A hug isn't background noise anymore. It's an event. Anthropologist Ashley Montague wrote an entire book on this decades ago, arguing that modern life had quietly engineered touch out of daily existence, and that societies would pay a psychological price for it. He was writing before smartphones, before remote work, before entire relationships could exist without a single moment of physical contact. If he thought touch was disappearing then, what would he say now? You don't need Harlow's wire monkey to understand what happens when touch is missing. You can feel it yourself, in smaller, quieter ways. The specific relief of a hug after a bad day, one that feels different from just talking about it. The strange comfort of a weighted blanket, which mimics the pressure of being held. The fact that a firm handshake registers as trustworthy before a single word is exchanged. None of that is random. That's an ancient survival circuit, still running, still trying to tell you the same thing it told you as an infant. You are not alone. You are safe. So which sense is actually the most important? Not the one that gives you the most information, the one that gave you your first proof that the world was safe enough to survive in. Close your eyes again. This time, notice what you feel instead. The weight of your own hands. The texture of the surface beneath you. The temperature of the air on your skin. That sense has been working since before you had a name, before you had language, before you even had thoughts. It was never the background sense. It was the first one. And somewhere underneath everything else you rely on, it still is.